Okay, the inquiry is resumed slightly later due to an IT technicality. Mr. Bird, would you like to start your cross-examination? Thank you.
Mr. Sensecall, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We can agree, can't we, that the changes made to the NPPF in December 2024 reflect the government's ambitions for growth, don't they?
They absolutely do, yes.
Those changes involved no change, did they, to paragraph 8, which set out the 3 overarching objectives?
Just bring up paragraph 8 to make sure. Nope. Sorry, no. Yes, I agree with you. There's no change.
Good. And no change to recognition that those objectives are are interdependent and need to be pursued in mutually supportive ways, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Good. And in terms of paragraph 11, 11D that you referred to in your evidence in chief, let's just go to that. Fair to say, isn't it, that recognising the effect of the other changes to the NPPF, which would be likely to engage paragraph 11 more frequently, the government took pains, didn't it, to ensure that the growth ambition should not be regarded as a free-for-all by adding wording to little d2, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Yes, and those words are having particular regard to key policies for directing development to sustainable locations, making effective use of land, securing well-designed places, and providing affordable homes individually or in combination.
Correct.
Good. So no lessening of weight to be given to those elements of NPPF policy.
Agreed.
And those include sustainable locations, effective use of land, and securing well-designed places, all relevant to this appeal.
Absolutely, yeah.
Good. Right. And in terms of greenbelt policy, we go to paragraph 153. No lessening is there to the weight to be accorded to the harm to the greenbelt where inappropriate development is involved.
No, that's correct.
Good. And there's no dispute between us, is there, Mr. Sensecall, that the preservation of the greenbelt is an interest of national importance, isn't it?
An interest of national importance?
Yes, greenbelt policy.
It's part of the NPPF, yes.
Yeah,
yes, it does have.
Helpful. Now, in terms of paragraph 86, let's just turn to that, which reference is made, and 87.
I'm sorry, paragraph
86 and 87. Building a strong competitive economy, in paragraphs we've been to a number of times at the inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
It's right to say, isn't it, that they sit within the context of greenbelt policy, don't they?
Well, greenbelt policy sits across the, is part of the NPPF.
Yeah. And they can benefit development which falls within, for example, paragraph 87, be it creative, high technology or other relevant industries, can benefit from the flexibility afforded by paragraph 155 only where criteria A, B and C are met.
Correct.
Yes. Now, as far as paragraph 155B is concerned, if we can just turn to that.
I have that.
Paragraph 155B does not say, does it, either in terms or by reference to any footnote, that development which would support industries in paragraph 87A of the NPPF satisfies the requirement to show demonstrable need without more, does it?
Without what, sorry?
Without more.
Without more. Yeah. It doesn't say that, no. But you have to read the document as a whole, which I have sought to do. And you heard my evidence this morning, and we'll doubtless talk about it further as to what paragraph 87 means and how it should be read.
Well, forgive me, if we go to footnote 56, it certainly tells us that it includes, in the case of applications involving housing, a lack of a 5-year supply of deliverable sites, doesn't it?
Yes.
If the government had intended that as a matter of general exception to inappropriate development, any development falling within paragraph 87 met the demonstrable need test, it would have said so, wouldn't it, Mr. Sensecall?
I'm not sure you can extrapolate it in that way.
Well, where in your proof, anywhere in your proof, do you make the point that need for the purposes of 155 is deemed to be met by reason of paragraph 87?
To be fair to you, Mr. Bird, I don't.
No.
But it's a matter that I have been giving some thought to since submitting my evidence and while this inquiry is being going on, and that is where I've got to.
Okay, so the inspector can note that the fundamental misunderstanding, which was it was put to Mr. Fannin, didn't actually occur to you before you wrote your proof of evidence, did it?
No, I mean, to be fair to all of us, this is all pretty new stuff,
Yeah.
and I think we've all been getting to grips with it. The MPPF came out just before Christmas, yes, I'll be quite honest about it. Yes, since Christmas, in thinking about this appeal, and having sat here for 15 days?
So far.
So far, yes. I don't think it's unreasonable for someone to develop one's thinking.
Well, let's just go to paragraph 87 and see whether you've developed it appropriately. Paragraph 87 applies, does it not? Not just to decisions, but also planning policies.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is it your case that in 2025, anyone anywhere in England preparing a local plan has to do so on the basis there must be sufficient flexibility to accommodate any scale of development which falls within knowledge and data-driven creative or high technology industries, for example, in their plan area, irrespective of limit?
No, it's not.
Right.
But by reference to clusters and networks of knowledge, there are going to be areas of the country where greater consideration will be given to the likes of the creative industries, this area being one, I would suggest.
Yes, but is it anything goes? Or does there have to be an assessment of need? As I understand your case, no assessment of need required. Anything goes, you have to provide for anything. Is that right?
I'm not suggesting one has to allow for anything and everything.
Right. So where is the threshold in paragraph 87 in terms of what has to be provided for?
But my point is that
No, answer the question.
Okay, there is not an explicit threshold written down in paragraph 87.
Good.
But there's a very, very clear intent on the part of government that there should be growth in the identified sectors, which includes the creative industries. Yeah,
and there is nothing, is there, in the MPPF which supports the contention that the demonstrable need, which needs to be demonstrated under 155B, is satisfied simply because a development falls within paragraph 87A.
Not simply because, but what I'm doing insofar as this case is concerned is taking all the evidence that we have, including the government's clear intent, and indeed, and my professional view is that the demonstrable need has been shown.
Yeah, we'll come back to that point.
Okay,
but any contention that 87A per se is a gateway through the demonstrable need requirement would be inconsistent with paragraph 8, wouldn't it? Because that would not be consistent with ensuring that the three overarching objectives are met in mutually supportive ways. It would effectively be a license to any scale of 87A development wherever it might fall.
Like all planning decisions, it's going to be a question of balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I stick by what I said, Mr. Bird, insofar as the support given in Policy 87 for industries, including the creative industries.
Well, no one disputes that it supports. It's the implications of that support and the relationship with 155 I'm asking you about. And just staying with the question of support, if you go to your proof piece, page 35, sorry, yes.
sorry, 887.
It's paragraph 8.87 on page
right,
35. Do you have that?
I have that.
Yeah, and you there set out, don't you, the local strategies around the creative industries within Buckinghamshire, Buckinghamshire's strategies, effectively.
Yeah, they're not local plan strategies, are they?
No,
They're economic strategies.
Yeah, they reflect the council's ambitions, don't they, as a corporate body?
They do, which aren't manifest in a development plan,
Well,
as far as I can see.
Yeah, that rider. But as I understand it, you don't, do you? Take issue with any of the strategies or suggest that any of them is inconsistent with the NPPF 2024, do you? They all entirely accord with the NPPF 2024, don't they?
When you say they all, you're talking about the strategy I list from
Yes.
887
Yes.
onwards.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Yes.
Yes, they do. But I'm not sure they do accord with the negativity we've had from the council over the last 15 days about this scheme.
And we'll come back to, as it were, the issues with the scheme in a moment. Just staying with 887 onwards, in terms of the support they give to the creative and digital sector, the recognition of international importance, and the recognition of the value that they deliver in terms of business activity and driving growth, that is all consistent with the NPPF, isn't it?
The words are consistent with the NPPF, yes.
And in terms of, indeed, ahead of their time, in terms of the NPPF, aren't they? In terms of the recognition they give to the clusters of creative industries in the county.
They predate the NPPF, that's correct.
Good.
But it's a question of also following through
Right.
on the aspirations set out herein.
Now, in terms of the development plan policies, I think respective positions are fairly clearly set out, but just in terms of the development plans, whether the plan policies, whether they're up to date or not, turns not on their age, does it? Or indeed whether they've been the subject of review. It turns on whether they are consistent with the NPPF.
Agreed.
Good. The test is a substantive one, not a procedural one, isn't it?
Agreed.
Yeah, good. Now, and if the inspector concludes that the appeal proposal is inappropriate development in the green belt,
yes,
we can agree, can't we, that the paragraph 11D presumption would only be engaged once very special circumstances had been demonstrated.
Correct.
Yes. And therefore unlikely to add anything material to the balance, isn't it, at that stage? If you've got very special circumstances, that's the pitch, the highest test you're likely to be able to show in the real world.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Now, as far as RUR4 is concerned, turn it up if you wish, 4.1, page 223 of the local plan.
Just bear with me. What was the page number, sorry?
223, which I think is the same in the PDF.
Sorry, my laptop is whirring. Oh, here we go. Yes, got it.
Good. It's no part of policy RUR4, is it? That it is contingent on designation, statutory designation of the allocated area as a country park.
Well, there seems to be one could read it. There's a presumption it's already a country park. The way that it's drafted.
No, but just stay with the question. There is it's no part, is it, of RUR4 that the policies are contingent upon statutory designation as a country park?
Well, with the caveat of the answer I just gave, you're correct. Yes.
Good. And there's nothing, is there, in the supporting text which says the policy is contingent upon formal designation as a country park?
I'm just looking at the
statutory designation.
Looking at it now. No.
And we can agree, can't we, to the extent that the allocated area is presently enjoyed for the purposes of outdoor recreation, that is consistent with the allocation.
To the extent that, sorry, just say that again?
To the extent that the allocated area is already enjoyed for the purposes of outdoor recreation, that is consistent with the allocation.
Consistent with the aspirations of the allocation.
Yes. And as I understand it, you don't dissent, do you, or don't dispute the factual content of Mr. Kennett's appendices, which we went to a little earlier today, which show the various outdoor recreation activities which are made of the allocated area.
No,
do
we
you?
don't dispute that. I don't.
Including on land which is privately owned.
There is some privately owned land in there, yes.
Yeah, good.
Which is a function of previous uses, isn't it? The water bodies in particular.
Well, there's also campsite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Let's move to the appropriate debate. As far as the grey belt issue is concerned, your starting point, I think if we go to your proof, please, and paragraph 311. Page 10.
Yes.
Your clear, tell us there, your clear view is that the appeal site reads as an area of denuded urban fringe with scope and capacity for change. I'm not going to debate that with you. We've heard the arguments in terms of Mr. Smith's case. And
That's my
Mr.
starting
Fannon's
point,
view, but
yeah.
that's your starting point. And as regard to the strongly test in paragraph 155 of the MPPF, we agreed, aren't we? The government is yet to issue its guidance on how to identify grey belt land.
That is correct.
Promised, and I think it's now promised in the next few weeks, but not yet available.
Correct. Yes.
And you undertake your balance on the basis of both bases, don't you? I.e. grey belt and green belt.
I do.
Yes, good. So it's not your case, is it? Or you're not so confident in your case as to grey belt that you chose to undertake your balance exclusively by reference to grey belt as opposed to green belt?
I am confident of my case, but I've been doing this job long enough to understand that it's very helpful to give the decision maker an alternative view in case they don't agree with me.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a reasonable alternative view, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, good.
Sorry, reasonable in what sense? But no, can I
Reasonable
rephrase
in
that?
terms of it could be held by a reasonable person, the alternative.
Well, my view is that there is in this case, I know this is new territory for all of us, but
Yeah.
but looking at the guidance that we have, I think there is a very strong case. I think our case is very strong that this is grey belt.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, but you set out, and you said you set out the alternative option to give the inspector your view on the alternative option, and you did so on the basis that would be a reasonable opinion for her to hold.
Yes, it would.
Yeah, good.
Subject to how it's justified in the decision.
Of course, yeah.
Sorry, but
Yeah, and carry influence. There we are. Yes, there we are.
oh dear.
And in terms of the threshold, just so we're clear, just so your understanding, is just strong in terms of your understanding, is that a single point on a scale, or do you regard strongly as being a range?
There has to be an element of range in there. Yes, I think that does.
Yeah. So where is the bottom of the range?
It's 4 to 5. If it's a scale of 1, if it's a scale of 1 to 5, it's going to be 4 to 5 in my view.
Right. So it has to be at the upper end of greenbelt, effectively, before you could actually qualify as strongly. That's your approach. Okay. Now, as far as the parcels here are concerned, I'm not going to spend a lot of time debating with those. We've heard a lot of evidence already. We've got your respective views. But as I understand it, you don't dissent, do you, from Arup's assessment of parcel 60 as strongly performing against purpose B, looking at that larger parcel?
Yeah, because they were looking at that parcel as a whole, and if that whole parcel were developed, that yes, there would be harm insofar as purpose B was
Good.
concerned.
So we're looking at an area of greenbelt which performs strongly.
Sorry, in the Arup assessment or in this appeal?
In the Arup assessment, and you accept the Arup assessment in relation to parcel 60.
Parcel 60 as a whole, yes.
So we're dealing with an area of greenbelt which performs strongly, aren't we?
That was there. Well, that was an interesting conclusion, though, wasn't it? They looking at their range. One might have been slightly surprised to see that they alighted upon strong.
Well, I don't think you were surprised, because if you go to paragraph 813, you tell us that you weren't surprised. Page 22. It is therefore hardly surprising to me that such a score was given for this wide area of land.
That's a different point.
No.
What well,
it is. Point. In terms of parcel 60, which I'm asking you about, you were not surprised that that score of 5 was given to that wide area, were you?
No, I was talking about the numbered weighting they gave it. But no, I retract that, because they did give it a 5.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good, thank you very much.
But that was, as I said in an answer to the previous question, because they were looking at the full extent, the whole of the land between Marlow and Bourne End.
And I appreciate your point, and the way you say it doesn't apply equally to the appeal side. But just as a starting point, in terms of this area of greenbelt, we're agreed it's strongly performing, and we can leave to the inspector the contribution this site makes to
the area within which the appeal site sits. The appeal site is a small part of that area.
Yeah. Parcel 60.
Parcel 60. Yes.
Good. And we know that, as a matter of fact, the government took a conscious decision to exclude purpose C from grey belt definition.
Yes.
But the inclusion of purpose A and B demonstrates, does it not, and indeed D, there's no lessening of general commitment to prevent urban sprawl and the separation of settlements.
In a greenbelt sense, there's no lesser commitment, but the fact that they've now introduced a threshold does show an intent insofar as releasing land that doesn't perform strongly.
I appreciate that, but there must be no conscious decision involved in excluding C but not A and B.
That's fair. Yes.
It can't be right, can it, to say that, as it were, all land on the urban edge, which might constitute sprawl, should be treated as appropriate, because if that were the case, then as with C, it would have been excluded.
That's fair, and it's interesting that C was in the earlier draft, but didn't make its way to the final version.
Yep. Can we also agree this much? As far as the inspector here is concerned, she has the luxury, I say luxury, she probably doesn't regard it as a luxury, of extensive and detailed evidence on how the site performs in greenbelt terms and in the context of a specific scheme, doesn't she? From Mr. Smith, yourself, Mr. Fannon.
There's a lot of evidence for the inspector to consider.
Yeah, and a far greater level and detailed assessment than available to Arup.
Sorry, Arup were carrying out an assessment.
Yeah.
And as experts in their field.
Yeah.
Various experts have carried out additional assessments in relation to this appeal. I'm not quite sure I understand the question. So the inspector's role here is to decide where the balance lies, if you like, between the evidence that the detailed professional evidence that she's received.
Accept that entirely. It's a matter of judgment for her in the light of all the evidence she has, isn't it?
If that's the point you're making, yes, it is a matter of judgment for her to make in light of the evidence she's received.
And if you are right in terms of your assessment against purposes A, B, and I think C, effectively that no relevant greenbelt purpose is performed here. I think it's 0 out of 5 for A, 1 out of 5 for B.
Yes.
Is 820 of your proof, page 23.
Yeah.
the site would not be in the Greenbelt now, would it? It would have been released as a result of the Arup assessment.
Sorry, I don't.
Well, effectively, you're saying that it performs no relevant Greenbelt role. There's been no change of circumstance, has there, since the Arup work? Which
Well, the change of circumstance is the new policy on grey belt.
no, in terms of the site characteristics and context.
The site characteristics are, well, I would imagine, are broadly as they were when Arup did their work.
Right. And if we go to page 23 of your proof and 820, we see your A and B scoring there.
Yes.
Those effectively have you informed your judgment, not just in relation to grey belt, but also your judgment as to the harm to green belt, haven't they?
Yes, they have. Yes.
Good. Then back to 155.
But
please.
sorry, but the qualification there is that I'm myself and Mr. Smith are looking at the appeal site, not Area 60.
I appreciate that.
So it's a different context to the context that Arup were looking at.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's part 1 and the part 2, isn't there? The part 2 was more focused in.
Well, it was more focused. Yes.
Fine. Then, as far as back to 155, please, it'll be in the demonstrable unmet need test. It's clear from the wording, isn't it, that there has to be a current unmet need.
There is a demonstrable unmet need for the type of development proposed. Yes.
Yeah. And it's worded in such a way as to impose a strict test, isn't it?
Could you expand?
Yes. Well, demonstrable unmet need is a strict test, isn't it?
There's got to be evidence of an unmet need.
And it's not concerned, is it, with future need?
I'm not sure you can say that, actually.
Well, do you say it is concerned with future need? There is a demonstrable unmet need.
Well, it's dealing in the here and now. I accept that, but again, I think one has to look at this in context, and in part of that context is, I go back to it, paragraphs 85 to 87.
We can also agree, can't we, that a demonstrable unmet need is not, is it, an aspiration or an ambition?
We can agree that, yes.
Good. And in terms of requiring a current demonstrable unmet need, that is consistent, isn't it, with the need for the permanence of the green belt and the emphasis within the MPPF which remains that changes to green belt boundaries should generally be made through the development plan process. Well, not generally, should be made through the development plan process.
Changes to the green belt boundary, yes. Sure. But we're talking here about a grey belt designation, if you like, not a removal, a removal of the site from the green belt.
A very special circumstances case, but that comes back to my point.
Yes,
current demonstrable need is effectively what is required, which is a high threshold.
It is a high threshold, and again, it's for the inspector to form a view. But we've produced very detailed evidence, which, in my professional opinion, goes above that threshold.
I appreciate that's your view.
It is.
We're not trespassing on that ground. We go to 155 little c, please, of the MPPF.
Yes.
There's no reference, is there, to paragraph 116 of the framework in little c?
No, there isn't.
So the mere fact that a development might have no unacceptable or severe effect in highway terms does not override, does it, the importance of directing growth to sustainable locations?
I'm sorry, could you ask that again?
Yeah. The absence of paragraph 1, reference to paragraph 116.
Yes.
demonstrates that the mere fact that a development might have no unacceptable effect in safety terms or a severe impact in capacity terms.
So it might not have a severe impact or have a severe impact.
But it might have no.
It might have no severe
Yeah.
impact.
Yes,
Right.
is not, is it, a factor, relevant factor, which overrides the importance of directing growth to sustainable location?
It doesn't override it, no.
Good.
But it's a material consideration if there is no severe impact.
We'll come back to that in a moment. Just then turning to the effect on openness, there's no dispute, is there, that even if the Secretary of State were to accept the development was appropriate.
Sorry, that was me, sorry.
Was it?
Sorry.
Right. We don't have any idea where noises are coming from in this room.
So apologies. That wasn't deliberate.
No. Yes, in terms of the effect on openness, there's no dispute, is there, that even if the Secretary of State were to accept the development was appropriate in Greenbelt terms, that the effect on the openness of the Greenbelt of the development would still be a material consideration.
Correct, yes. And I've assessed that and given weight to that.
Yes, well, what weight have you accorded to that? We go to 827 of your proof, I think, is where you accept the proposition.
I've given that substantial weight.
No, I don't think you have, in fairness to you.
If it's not inappropriate.
Yes. Sorry. Yes. If it's appropriate development in the Greenbelt, as I understand Mr. Sensecall, he accepts you still have to give weight to the effect on openness.
Yes.
But not the substantial weight that you give to.
Oh, sorry. If this is where all these negatives get confuse one. If it's appropriate, that test doesn't apply. If it's inappropriate, it does.
Yes, but the point you're making in 827 is that the effect on openness still goes into the planning balance, even if not given substantial weight.
Yes.
Yes. And what I'm asking about is what weight do you give to the effect on openness? You don't actually tell us on that scenario.
I do, actually, at 9/11.
Well, I just want to be quite sure what the 9/11 is based on. That is on the basis of the appropriate balance.
That's what it says.
Right.
By way of summarising my assessment of benefits and harms in the planning balance brackets, assuming it is not a very special circumstances case,
I just wanted to
I
clarify.
produce the table below.
Yeah, that's fine. So it is significant.
Significant, yeah.
So the inspector, whatever view she forms in terms of the appropriate or inappropriate decision, needs to weigh the harms and be substantial if it's inappropriate development and significant on your balance.
On my
in terms
balance,
of the
yeah.
appropriate. Good. And in terms of the visual aspect of openness, there we're agreed, aren't we? We're not dealing with aesthetics. We're dealing with whether or not the Greenbelt will appear more built up with the development in place than it was before.
We are agreed, yes.
Good. And as I understand your weighting, you take the same view as Mr. Smith. We go to page 27 of your proof. And 839. Certainly in terms of the, and this is the second sentence of paragraph 839, effectively development will be primarily viewed in the context of the adjacent urban form, which will reduce significantly the impact on and perception of openness, particularly in longer distance views from the north and south.
Yes.
So that again is the judgment which informs your weighting.
Yes, it does.
Good, thank you. If the Inspector and Secretary of State conclude the development is inappropriate, then clearly purpose C comes into play, doesn't it?
It does, yes. And
And
I've considered that.
And you accept again there that that is a harm which would weigh against the appeal proposal.
Yes. And will be balanced against the various other circumstances.
Yep. Good. Then I think just if we could turn back to RUR4, please.
Do I need the policy?
I don't think you probably do, but if you wish to, then do. But I think we can do it without the policy, but it's 223 of 4.1 if you need it. Insofar as the policy allows development, it's development which is consistent with the RUR4 development management criteria, isn't it?
Insofar as the policy allows development,
Yes.
and the criteria being the 6 points.
Yes.
Yes, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, that's what the policy says. Yes.
Yeah. Good. And no dispute that as far as the appeal proposal is concerned, it is not an outdoor recreational use, is it? Although there are elements of it which would support outdoor recreational use.
Correct. Yes.
And RUR4 also sits within the context of Greenbelt policy, doesn't it?
Well, the site's in the Greenbelt.
Yeah. And it operates, the policy operates within the context of
Yes,
the
it
Greenbelt,
does.
doesn't it? Yeah. And you don't contend, do you, that the appeal proposals are of the limited small-scale development anticipated by the supplementary planning guidance, do you?
Do you want to take, well, do you want to take me to the SP?
It's called, I think it's called document 5.1, if you like, but if you want to go first to paragraph 8.47 of your proof, just to put that in context.
Yeah, I actually did at that paragraph. I think that paragraph that I referenced should be 5.1.2, just for the record. I was looking at this yesterday.
Not sure whether that was on your errata sheet or not.
I think it is actually.
It is on the errata sheet, yes. I didn't do that cross-reference. That's absolutely fair.
Major
You
part
picked
of the
that up
game.
in 8.47.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
So sorry, I
Yeah.
distracted
So
you.
back to my point.
Yes,
You
back to your
don't contend, do you, that in terms of the appeal proposal as a whole, it is the small, limited, small-scale development of the type you refer to in 8.47?
No, I don't.
No, good. And insofar as the RUR4 considerations have informed your balance, it's your view that any effect would be insignificant.
Say that again.
Yes,
Sorry.
insofar as RUR4 considerations and
Yes.
have informed your balance,
Yes,
it is that any adverse effects would be insignificant.
that's correct. Yeah,
it.
that's where
Yeah,
we are.
so the
Yes.
inspector can note your judgment in relation to that and form her own view.
Yes. All of which is in the context of the other points I've made in relation to
Yeah,
RUR4 and
Yeah.
where I think it sits.
Yes, I appreciate that. Then in terms of the Volvo bridge, you were here yesterday, weren't you, when I cross-examined Mr. Dix?
Yes, I was.
And you were here for hear him accept that in terms of paragraph 115 of the MPPF, it stresses the need for sustainable transport modes to be prioritised, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Could go, please, in your proof. To paragraph 8.172, please. Page 48 of your proof.
I have that, yes.
And the second bullet point. Says a commitment, if necessary, to make the development acceptable in planning terms to facilitate the provision of a replacement fully DDA compliant Volvo footbridge for walkers, cyclists and mobility paired users. Why do the words if necessary appear in your proof, Mr. Sensecall, given Mr. Dix's evidence?
Well, to be fair, the only consideration I've given to this is, if you like, is the construction of a new bridge and the cost of doing that commensurate with the benefit that will accrue in terms of cyclists, walkers, and those with a mobility issue.
Yeah, well, that's
but I do not resile from the position taken by or take a different view to that taken by Mr. Dix. He's the transport expert.
Well, as far as proportionate cost, that's the point you raise at 5.3 on page 12.
Yeah.
Yes, but when you wrote your proof of evidence, you were not apparently committed to provision of the Volvo footbridge. Is that right? Despite the fact that
No,
Mr. Dix was.
It was a considered view, but having thought this through and given that we don't have before this inquiry any other alternative provision, the Volvo bridge is the means by which we say that we can improve that crossing of the 404.
Well, forgive me, Mr. Sensecall, is your position that your clients are hoping that they might at some stage come back and argue that the footbridge isn't necessary?
No,
Right.
that's not my position.
Good. And the inspector on the evidence, and indeed the Secretary of State on the evidence, need to make it very clear in the decision, don't they, that it is necessary.
If that's the view the inspector comes to, yes,
Yeah.
needs to make
Well,
that very clear.
No other view to come to on
No,
the basis
no,
of Mr. Dix's
the evidence before this inquiry is that it's necessary.
Good. Then in terms of economic benefits, please, we've just turned to that. If you go to page 41 of your proof. Paragraph 8.119 on page 41. Do you have that?
Yes, where I summarise the evidence given by Mrs. Evans.
Yes, we have updated it in the light of the evidence that she gave in relation to her method 2.
No,
You
are correct. That I should have done that with the errata sheet.
Yeah, you should. I think the figure is not 4640, it's 2735 at her upper end. Isn't it?
Agreed. Accepted.
Does that change affect your weighting?
Absolutely not.
Right.
That's still a significant number of jobs.
Yeah. So you accept that in terms of we go to your weighting, please. (63 of 64).
Yes.
Which you've given substantial weight to the economic benefits here. That includes those jobs, doesn't it? And then the related GVA.
Absolutely it does.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your substantial must therefore be a range, mustn't it? Or do you give exactly the same weight to the 2735 jobs as you gave to the 4640 job?
I think it's fair to say that there is a range. These things are never an absolute, but it's well within my substantial range, because it isn't just about the jobs. You know, there are 8 points there. Yeah. And I am confident that we are still well within my substantial range.
Yeah, that is your judgment. And of course, it is a matter of judgment, isn't it?
It is a matter of judgment. That is my judgment.
We also see from your table on page 63 that, for example, in relation to the social and environmental benefits, you have amalgamated those, haven't you?
Amalgamated in what sense?
Well, the social benefits, if we go back in your proof that you have set out, section 4 on page 58, and the environmental benefits on page 59, you have amalgamated effectively into a single heading in your table.
Yes, and there are sub in paragraph 58 and 59, there's a heading social benefits, and then there are a number of bullet points under that heading.
Yeah.
And then at 5, environmental benefits, a number of benefits under that heading.
Yes.
And,
But
and yes, collectively, I say they are significant.
You weight them collectively. Yeah.
I'm sorry, read 8247 and 8248 because I thought each.
Well, this is what I'm asking about. But in the table, they are aggregated into actually significant. Whereas, in fact, if you go back to they're all individually identified. They're not in your table, are they?
Well, sorry, I don't quite. I mean, as Mr. White says, what I do say is I afford each of these environmental benefits significant weight.
Right. So when we come to your weighting, the social benefits are the list that you set out to which you've accorded significant weight to each of them. Just want to understand what you've done.
Sorry, what's the last bit of what was your comment then? I missed that.
Yes, to be quite sure what you've done. So
Yes.
as far as your table is concerned, where you have amalgamated them under a single heading, what you're in fact saying is that each of the social and environmental benefits in 4 and 5 should be accorded significant weight.
Yes.
Yes. And are those, as it were, in terms of your significance, do you attach exactly the same weight in your category of significance to each of those benefits, or do they vary as a matter of judgment?
I approach each of them individually and exercise judgment.
Yes.
And I've come to a considered view on each of them, which has led me to conclude that overall the benefits are significant.
Okay, thank you. Then in terms of the alternative sites assessment, we go to page 58 of your proof.
Yep.
Very properly in paragraph 8.241, you don't treat the lack of alternative sites as a separate benefit because, of course, it's part of an element of the need case, isn't it?
That's why I did it that way. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you for sounding it properly.
Credit where credit's due.
Oh, thank you.
What, as a matter of fact, did the site search actually involve?
Well, there were 2 iterations of it.
No. That's the alternative sites assessment, which was undertaken after the site had been selected. I'm asking as to what the actual selection of the site involved. I've asked all of the relevant witnesses up till now, none of whom could tell me what the actual process involved. Do you know?
I've read there was a scope, a draft scope. There was a scope discussed with the council, as I understand it, and then work was carried out on the basis I set out in the submitted materials.
That was after, as I understand it, after your clients had acquired the site. I'm interested in what was the process which led to the identification and acquisition of the site?
I don't know what the process was that led to the acquisition of the site.
And as far as the alternative sites assessment itself, it focused exclusively on the West London cluster as identified at the date of the survey or assessment.
It was then extended, though, wasn't it, on the second iteration?
Yes, but it's been extended since. The West London cluster has extended since, hasn't it? As far as
but sorry, the alternative sites assessment was extended on its second iteration.
Yep, that's fair.
Following discussions with the council.
Still West London cluster.
Yes.
Good. And effectively based on the critical mass.
Yes.
Right.
Because you've had evidence on the critical mass from others as to why it is what it is.
Yeah. And at 118115, page 40 of your proof, you refer to the Tesco and Dundee case.
What was the paragraph number again? Sorry.
It's 8.115, which is on page 40 of your proof.
Yes.
Yes, which was, and we can make submissions on it in due course, a case which was concerned with the particular wording of the retail sequential test, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So what relevance does it have to whether or not your clients can demonstrate they've exhausted?
Well, it
Or
goes to the
reason
disaggregation
to-
point
Yes.
that my clients alighted upon a scheme, put that scheme before the local planning authority and asked them to make a determination on it. And now that scheme is before the appellant. There were suggestions from Mr. Fannin that if they had chosen a different size, if they'd gone with a different mix of uses, there would have been a different assessment. Well, that's forever thus, yes.
Yeah.
But we have put forward a scheme and justified that scheme. And it's that disaggregation point that I'm getting at.
Okay, just so I understand it. We can agree also in terms of alternative site assessment in a greenbelt context. The context for that is that any development in the greenbelt, certainly inappropriate development, has to be justified, doesn't it?
It has to be justified.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is why I said in my evidence that there was no policy requirement to do an alternative sites test, but quite rightly, those acting at the time decided it was a good thing to do.
Yes. Well,
and was material to consideration of the proposal as put forward.
yeah, well, if you don't do it, you are at significant risk of not being able to demonstrate very special circumstances, aren't you?
Possibly, yes.
Yeah, good.
Depending on the nature of the use on the site.
Equally, if you don't do it adequately, you risk not being able to demonstrate very special circumstances, don't you?
Well, yes, it's one consideration amongst the myriad of considerations as to whether you've demonstrated VSC.
Then can we just touch on residential amenity, please? If we go to paragraph 8.198 of your proof, page 52.
Yes.
You say there that, and you disagree in this context with the officer report identifying moderate harm, you say you disagree with this. While I acknowledge the amenity of the nearest neighbours will change, this is almost always true when planning permission is granted, in brackets, don't you?
I do say that, yeah.
Yeah. This is not, is it, an almost always case, having regard to the scale of the development proposed? You accept, don't you, there's going to be a significant change to the setting of the residential properties, don't you?
There will be a significant change to their setting. That setting doesn't have a, well, interesting, well, there are the listed buildings.
Yes, I'm not
but
dealing with heritage issues.
no.
Yeah.
Good. So it'll be different from what it is now, yes.
Yes, and it includes, that change includes, doesn't it, the fact that the sole access to those properties presently likely traffic will be shared with 1,400 vehicles.
There will be additional vehicle movements on that road, and the road is being improved to allow for that.
Yeah. And however the development is mitigated, the scale and density of the development will transform the character of the area, won't it?
It'll be different from what it is now.
Well, no, it'll transform it, won't it, in reality?
It'll be very different from what it is now.
Right. Then we go back, please, to your table, please, on page 63. Just so I understand the position. your table assumes no conflict with either 1110 or 115 of the MPPF and no conflict with 116 of the MPPF in highways terms, doesn't it?
Can I just
You do, yeah.
pull up the
Yeah.
paragraphs? 11.
110, 115, 116. Yeah, so
No, we're talking. You're taking me to the MPPF, aren't you?
MPPF. These are the highways considerations.
Yes.
So effectively, your table, you're reliant on Mr. Dix, aren't you?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Good, madam. I think that's all I need to ask. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you want to take a short? Well, we need to swap places, don't we? So yeah, let's take a short adjournment. Come back at 3 o'clock. Please don't speak to anybody in your party and switch around, please. We're adjourned until then. Thank you.